I am a huge fan, now that I know me and I have a closer relationship with me, that I can believe my experience of me now. And other people can have other experiences. But before, I did not have appropriate boundaries or parameters around other people's perspectives and standards and mine. And so I would often walk out in the world like a big projection screen, like just a big old white screen in front of me. And people would project things onto me, their opinions, their beliefs about me, them, whatever. And I will go wear that around. So I am such a fan of walking through this work, being able to witness yourself and experience yourself in a way that's connected to your own honesty, and to be able to differentiate between someone else's experience of you and your experience of you. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Per usual, I just want to acknowledge that you are here investing your time in learning and growing, and that means something to me. So whether you are folding laundry right now, listening to this, driving in your car, going on a walk, sitting watching it on YouTube, I am grateful that you're here. And I am so proud of you for continuing to show up for yourself, because I'm sure there are a million other things you could be doing. On that note, last week I had a very, very, very special guest on. In fact, I laughed after the episode because I thought, gosh, this is going to be the easiest episode I've ever had, because I feel so comfortable with Mike Morris, my therapist that I've had for a very long time. And in fact, it was a little bit more difficult because I had a lot of emotions coming up, trying to wrap up in a podcast like what Mike means to me, the relationship, his teachings. So it ended up proving to be a little bit more challenging than I had anticipated. But I'm so grateful that he got to come on. I'm glad that the people that have known me for a long time and heard me talk about my spiritual dad, because that's the nickname I call him behind his back, that they got to put a face or a voice or an energy to a name. And for all of you that don't know me and are listening, that you just got to experience his energy, his teachings, and that my main hope in it was that people could see that a safe, loving relationship can change someone's life. And the risks that Mike took in our work, the unapologetic way that he was able to express and show love to me throughout that process absolutely changed my life. And I know that my soul needed Mike. My inner child needed Mike. And I am just so grateful for him in general, and that he got to come on this show and share with you some of his teaching. So as we speak right now, Mike is in surgery, and I'm just going to ask again. I asked last week if anybody is open to prayer or sending good energy Mike's way. I would really appreciate it. He's got a little bit of a recovery journey ahead of him, and just more teaching to do on this planet. So if you are willing to send some energy Mike's way, I would be very, very, very appreciative. So after our episode, I started thinking about some of the things that we talked about. And if you listened to the episode, you heard us spend some time talking about the ego. And, I love to simplify things and find really simplified definitions. That one's a little bit hard. If any of you guys know it, please let me know. But I think it's kind of a hard concept to land. What makes sense to me, and we mentioned it in the episode last week, is that ego is a necessary part of our human experience because it creates this illusion of separateness. And I think Mike mentioned it last week where if we didn't have this experience of separateness or an individualized experience, then if someone walked into a crowded room and yelled Robin, everyone would turn around. We wouldn't know that Robin was not me or that Robin is only me. And I think that it's an important experience for our soul's journey here. Also, I know that when people hear or think about the ego, sometimes they think about arrogance or grandiosity, selfishness, or someone that thinks they're better than someone else. And that is not the definition that I'm talking about today. When I think about ego, I think about something that every human being experiences. It is a part of every single human being's journey. It is the part of us that can sometimes worry or compare ourselves to others, seek approval, sometimes needs certainty in situations. And it can definitely be the part that's scanning for what will keep us safe. Because it makes sense to me that the ego's job is to help us survive and keep us alive. And I think somewhere along the way, it adapted into keeping us good enough. I'm not even sure how that happened. In fact, now that I'm saying it, I'd love to have an expert on one day that can maybe give me a theory of how that happened, if there even is one out there. But I believe that it adapted to help us belong, to help us feel accepted, and ultimately good enough. Now, the problem with operating from your ego is that it can create an enormous amount of suffering in your life. And it can create a lot of suffering when we confuse the ego voice with truth. And I love what Mike teaches and taught me a long time ago. And he told me that ego can be on the board of directors of your life, but not the CEO. In other words, it's bringing you possibly some good information. It is working with you to try to keep you safe. But a lot of times it's going to be maladaptive. So as I was reflecting back on last week's episode, I was reminded of something I learned a few years ago. And it's called the 3 lies of the ego. And the 3 lies of the ego are, I am what I have, I am what I do, I am what other people say I am. When I first heard this years ago, I froze. I'm like, wait a minute, that could be a large majority of where my suffering comes from. Is the belief that I am what I have, I am what I do, I am what other people say I am. My guess is that if you're human, which y'all are, you've probably believed some version of them too. Some of these thoughts are running so unconsciously that we don't even realize that we're believing them because they sound true and they feel true. And they can quietly influence how we see ourselves and move through the world. So in this episode, we're going to walk through each of them, and I'm going to invite you to notice where they may show up in your life. So the first one, I am what I have. The first lie is the belief that who I am is connected to what I have. Now, I now know that I have people listening to this podcast in various places in the world. I've only lived in America. This one, ooh-wee for America. It's important what we have in America. And it has been, shoved down our throat in a lot of ways. So some examples could be a relationship, a marriage, a career, money, a home, success, recognition, money, accomplishment. Now, most of us are not consciously walking around thinking that our worth comes from these things. But life has a way of showing us where we've attached our identity. And the way life shows us is through suffering. So maybe it's a relationship that ends and it feels like we have lost ourselves. Maybe it's a career change and suddenly we're questioning our value in the world. Maybe a dream or idea doesn't work out and we're left wondering if we're even worthy of attracting what we want in our life. And of course, that's where grief comes in. I'm not sure if I've said it on this podcast, but my new mantra or saying in this life is never not grieving. Because grief is just, I think, the emotion we experience the most in this life, because change is a constant. Nothing stays the same here. So sometimes we're grieving the identity we've attached to something. Maybe it's the future we imagined, the story we thought our life was going to tell, or the version of ourselves we thought we were becoming. I happened to grow up in an area that was really wealthy and had old money, which is interesting. And I think that I spent a good majority of my 20s trying to accumulate all the things, the handbags, the cars, the clothing, the labels, to try and feel like what I had added to my worth. Now, what we know about intrinsic self-esteem is that you are worthy because you are here. You are worthy because you were created. And nothing could add or subtract to your worth, which means that no one is more worthy or less worthy than anyone else. So that would bring us back to the lie that something you have would increase your value. I know that still to this day, I can get hung up on feeling like something in my life isn't good enough. Now, I would say probably my core wound is around shame. Another way of saying that is my core wound is that I don't feel enough. And when I'm suffering, sometimes that wound won't just point at me, it will start pointing out around me. Like, not only am I not enough, but this house isn't enough. And this closet isn't enough. And this bank account isn't enough. And I often, in fact, I had the 3 lies of the ego on a Post-it note on my bathroom mirror for probably 2 years. And often I would walk by it and kind of scan like, okay, where's my suffering right now? And do any of these 3 lies hit on it? Number 1 hit often. And it was such a great reminder that my worth is not attached to what I have. I think it's just a very human experience. Highly recommend that you throw these 3 lies on a Post-it note, stick it on your bathroom mirror, and walk by it. Check. Okay, where am I suffering today? And do any of these lies align with what I'm suffering about? It is a small energetic shift in your body, but when I remember I am not my home, I am not what I have, I am not the amount of money in my bank account, I come back to my intrinsic worth. So a great question related to the first lie is if whatever you have that you find of value or that an egoic part of you might feel contributes to your value, if that thing disappeared tomorrow, what would still be true about you? Because who you are and what you have are not the same thing. Lie number 2, I am what I do. The second lie is the belief that who I am is connected to what I do. This one often shows up through achievement, productivity, helping, caretaking, success, responsibility. This one shows up often through achievement, seeing yourself or connecting your identity to your job, your productivity, helping, caretaking, success, responsibility, being the person that everyone depends on. And many of us learned very early on that being useful mattered. Contributing, succeeding, performing mattered. And over time, it becomes really easy to build an identity that's very connected to these roles. Sometimes the roles are you're the helpful one, you're the achiever, you're the parent, you're the caretaker, the provider, the successful one, the responsible one. And then life changes. Your child leaves home. A career shifts. Retirement happens. Burnout happens. Maybe there's health changes or circumstances change. And suddenly we're left asking, who am I without this role? Now I'm going to tell a lot of personal stories today. I don't know why, but I'm on one, so why not go with it? I had a very unique experience happen, and I will spare you guys the details, but I know some of the people listening know about it. Long story short, I hired an attorney for a side business that I was doing that was connected to coaching and therapy in that world. And I had to hire an attorney. Well, fast forward, because it's a very long story, I ended up hiring an attorney, or who I thought was an attorney. And it turns out she was not an attorney. She was a con artist and had been caught impersonating an attorney 6 times in the state of Michigan. So again, without going into all of the awful details of living through that experience, I did turn her into the state of Michigan and the Bar Association because that seemed like the ethical thing to do. And the state of Michigan pressed charges against her for impersonating a licensed professional. And they asked me to be a witness, and I agreed. I didn't end up even having to testify because she confessed, but I did have to go to the courthouse. And while I was there, kind of sitting in the back, just in case they called me, the attorney for the state of Michigan called me a therapist. And because I've only been to court one time, which was when I got an MIP in college, don't recommend that to anybody. That was the only time I ever went to court. I did not know what to do. This court case didn't have anything to do with me. I was sitting in the back. I didn't want to interrupt and say, life coach, not therapist. And so I just sat there and thought, you know what, I'll correct the attorney after. And of course I did. But it was said in front of someone, this woman who was impersonating an attorney who was not well. And I believe was pretty upset that I had reported her to the state of Michigan. And so she called the state of Michigan and told them that I was impersonating a licensed professional and that I had told a federal judge that I was a therapist, not a life coach. Which did not happen because I never even spoke. So long story short, it all got cleared up. There were transcripts that showed I did not say it, that the attorney made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. But I got a call from an officer from the state of Michigan telling me that I had been reported for impersonating a licensed professional, which is a felony in the state of Michigan. And he left me a message. I called him back. It was like after 6 o'clock. So for 24 hours, I did not hear back from this person. And a level of panic came over me because I thought, well, one, I thought, God, I'm doing good things in the world and I'm using all of my gifts and talents for good. Why would this happen to me now? Also, I think I'm missing a part of the story. He didn't really tell me who had reported me, so I didn't really know what was going on. I mean, obviously, that was kind of like the first thing that came to mind. But for 24 hours, I sat in fear that this coaching business, which has become one of the most beautiful aspects of my life, could be taken away from me. And I, in a 24-hour period of time, had to face that I am not this job. That even if I lost the ability, which I didn't, clearly, because I didn't do any of the things that I was being accused of, and it was all cleared. But if I lost this business tomorrow, could I still be Robin? Could I still be worthy? Could I still dust off, pick up, and keep going? Could I still help people in maybe a different way? And I mean, it was gnarly. I don't think I could eat for like a day. I couldn't sleep. And finally, I got to the place of surrender where I went, you know what, universe, if this career is going to be taken from me because of super unfair circumstances, that would be really hard. I can grieve it. And it doesn't have to be the totality of my identity, even though it's something that I love. Now, of course, it wasn't taken from me, and it wasn't taken from me in an unfair way. But I had to face, like, who would I be? Because this is such a beautiful part of my life. It's something I'm extremely proud of. And who would I be without it? So I tell you that story not to bring up my Jerry Springer stories of my past, but, and if anybody, I say Jerry Springer because I think people know, but maybe you're young and you don't know. Jerry Springer was a very, very trashy talk show with a lot of crazy storylines. So just a little context if you didn't know what Jerry Springer was. But I did have to look at, who am I without what I do for a living and the space that I provide for people. And the bottom line is I'm still going to be me, and there's still going to be options and opportunities. And I believe it's one of the reasons why so many people struggle when life transition happens. And the transition isn't only about what's changed. It's not just about losing your job or an industry, change that has eliminated your position. It's also about the identity that you've attached to it. Because who you are is bigger, so much bigger than what you do. Lie number 3. Oof, this one stings for me. I am what other people say I am or think of me. So the third lie is the belief that other people get to define who you are. And this one often starts early, because we have received messages about ourselves from our family, friends, teachers, coaches, partners, culture, experiences. Some of those messages are helpful, but most of us were not witnessed or mirrored back for who we were. And so some of those messages are painful. Some might be accurate. Listen, people hold mirrors up to us. That's probably the main purpose of relationships, is for us to be able to see ourselves through the mirror of others. So sometimes people's feedback is accurate, and sometimes it's completely inaccurate. But sometimes when we hear things enough times, it starts to feel true. And sometimes maybe someone didn't even directly say it to us. It's the belief that we associated around someone's behavior. But either way, at some point, we stop questioning it. And we carry it. Sometimes we carry it for decades. And we start to see ourselves through someone else's lens instead of our own. Now, my personal story for this one is that I had someone give feedback that I know about my podcast and said, oh, yeah, no, I mean, Robin's work is really good, but it's really selfish. And I will tell you that I think anytime you hear critical feedback from someone, it stings. Like, I don't think I'm immune now. I love letting people be wrong about me. It's one of my favorite skill sets that I carry now, but it doesn't mean it doesn't sting. And initially that stung for a minute. I was like, ouch, man. And then I really thought about it and I went, okay, well, what is my experience of this work? my experience of this work is that it's anything but selfish. In fact, I think that I'm going to assume this person's talking about boundary setting. I think that boundary setting is probably one of the most loving things, and I'm talking about from a vibrational perspective of love, that we can do for ourselves and others in relationships. So what I did was I checked my experience of things, and I went, oh, I know that my work isn't selfish in my experience. That doesn't have to be someone else's experience. And that's good enough for me. I am a huge fan, now that I know me and I have a closer relationship with me, that I can believe my experience of me now. And other people can have other experiences. But before, I did not have appropriate boundaries or parameters around other people's perspectives and standards and mine. And so I would often walk out in the world like a big projection screen, like just a big old white screen in front of me. And people would project things onto me, their opinions, their beliefs about me, them, whatever. And I would go wear that around. And it sucks. It creates a lot of suffering. So I am such a fan of walking through this work, being able to witness yourself and experience yourself in a way that's connected to your own honesty, and to be able to differentiate between someone else's experience of you and your experience of you. Now, there are times that people have held up mirrors that I've looked in and been like, dang, I think that's true. And I don't like it, but I want to be the best version of me. And now that I know I can manage shame, I can manage guilt, I can manage some of these lower vibrational energies, I can lean into some feedback. But this is one that a lot of people struggle with. I am what other people say I am. Because there is a difference between who you are and what someone or something taught you to believe about yourself. So if you are not these things, then who are you? Are you ready for another personal story? Today is me talking about me. But I love this story, and I've talked about it so many times with clients. And it's one of like the silly stories I tell that just had it was like a profound moment in my life. Because I had been told by various people who I was, and it wasn't always positive. And because I had that projection screen out in front of me, I would go wear it and I would try it on. And I don't think I actually knew who I really was. So I had done some work on myself, and I went to the grocery store, and there was a lady struggling to put her groceries in the car. She was an older woman, and she was in one of those motorized scooters. And I might have told this story already on the podcast, but I got to my car because I walked by her. I didn't really know how to offer to help her. She wasn't asking. And then I thought, what if she's actually okay and I'm going to override her independence or whatever? And so I went to my car and I sat in the car. And I questioned myself. I got curious, like, why wouldn't you just go help that lady, you know? And the reason I didn't was because I was afraid of rejection. I thought, what if she embarrasses me in the parking lot and says like, I don't need your help, I'm fine. What if I embarrass her in the parking lot? It just felt really awkward. And it was like the first time in my life that I went, okay, I hear you. And then I went, but who are you, Robin? And I went, well, I'm kind. And then I said, okay, well, go be kind then. And of course I went out and I helped the lady, and she was very appreciative and told me, you know, she didn't know how she was going to get him in her car, and I was an angel and whatever. And she did not embarrass me and I did not embarrass her. But it was the first time that I really witnessed who I am in my authenticity. And I have enough data. Remember, we talk about data over time. I have enough data that I truly am a kind person. It doesn't mean I don't have my moments. We're all human. But generally speaking, I'm a very kind person. And I would rather operate off of that than fear. And so now I take the risk every time that something like that happens, where I go, okay, who are you? You're kind. Who are you? You're loyal. Who are you? You're a person of your word. Like, I have enough evidence now to know that that's who I am and operate from it. So as I reflected back on that silly story, I thought about, before all those thoughts showed up and before the worry about what she might think or worrying if I would embarrass her or myself, there was simply an impulse. I wanted to help. And whether she accepted the help wasn't the point. The point is that the impulse told me something about myself. It pointed towards a quality that I had enough data on that was true. And I think all of us have moments like that. Moments that reveal something about our character or who we are in our core. It tells us about our values and about who we are underneath the roles, the accomplishments, the possessions, and the opinions of others. So this week, I'd love to invite you to spend a little time with this question. Who am I? Now, I did not ask in that question about your accomplishments, your relationship status, what other people think about who you are. I'm asking, who am I at my core? So I've got a couple journal prompts for you to be able to get curious about this question, because it's a big question. What qualities have followed me throughout my life? When do I feel most like myself? What values matter most to me? What qualities show up when I'm acting in alignment with myself? What do people experience when they experience the healthiest version of me? And what qualities would I like my life to reflect? Then start making a list. See what emerges. See what emerges, what keeps showing up, and what feels true. You may discover qualities that have been present your entire life. You may notice qualities that remain whether life is going beautifully or falling apart. And you may notice qualities that don't depend on your success, approval, achievement, or your circumstances. So the goal in this is to become more aware of the qualities that feel most true to who you are, because those qualities can become guideposts. They can become your North Stars. They can allow you the ability to check in with yourself when you're making decisions, to evaluate whether something feels aligned, and a way of remembering who you are when the thoughts in your head get noisy. And when you're unsure of what to do, you can come back to those qualities and ask yourself, does this choice move me towards the person I know myself to be or away? So the 3 lies of the ego all attempt to answer the same question. Who am I? And listen, the answer to that, it comes through the things that change. Because what you have changes. What you do changes. And what people think changes. Life changes. But character travels with us. Values travel with us. Integrity travels with us. And those deeper core qualities remain whether life is going according to plan or not. And maybe that's the best place to begin. You don't have to start with who you've been told you are. And you can stop defining yourself with anything that is external or outside of you. But you can start with who you've been all along. So until next time, keep growing, and I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.